Hello there. We've got a mixed operations problem for you again. It's 5 plus 3 times 2 minus 4. What does that equal to? 5 plus 3 times 2 minus 4. Right, if you want to, you can pause the video here and we'll come back and work this one out together. It's a pretty simple problem, but I just want to make sure you get it right. All right, so if you remember your order of operations, there's several steps involved in that. First of all would be parentheses, which we don't have here, but if we did have parentheses, you'd solve anything inside of those parentheses first, according to the order of operations. And what that means is you would look inside of the parentheses and you'd look for exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and solve them in the proper order. And you would concentrate on solving inside of those parentheses first. But we don't have any, so we don't have to worry about that. The second step would be exponents. Exponents, really, it could be exponents, factorials. If you're familiar with a factorial, it's a number with an exclamation mark after it. But there's factorials or square roots, basically anything that's shorthand for repeated multiplication. So when you hear something like a PEMDAS, the E would be exponents, but exponents is just one part of it. It could be factorials or square roots as well. We don't have anything that complicated here. Just keep in mind what they're really talking about is anything that is shorthand for repeated multiplication. All right, so number three, and this is where we come in, we've got multiplication or division left to right. Just remember that multiplication and division have equal precedence. You just solve those left to right when you encounter them. Division is the same thing as multiplying by a reciprocal. So they have the same order. Um, Here is where we do have something, right? We do have multiplication. Finally, though, you have your addition and subtraction. And again, addition and subtraction have equal precedence. One doesn't come before the other. All right, so just remember things if you deal with acronyms like PEMDAS or BODMAS or BEDMAS, BIDMAS, any of those acronyms, they're not to be taken literally as if there were a six-step checklist. Your addition and subtraction have equal precedence. You can solve those in any order. All right, so there are no parentheses or exponents in this problem, so we start with multiplication, right? So 3 times 2 is what? 3 times 2 is 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 minus 4 is 7. So pretty simple. The answer is 7. Now, I see a lot of people that are doing this and they're saying, well, there's no parentheses. So I just go at left to right, and I add 5 plus 3 and get 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 minus 4 is 12. And I can tell you that is the wrong answer. And a lot of people will also argue, well, if they wanted you to do the multiplication first, they would have written 3 times 2 first. And again, that's not right. A lot of people think that mathematics is just like reading a sentence in a book. You do go left to right, but you go left to right, keeping in mind the order of operations. It's always been that way, but a lot of people do forget. Just remember that multiplication is repeated addition. This is one of the problems people have. They memorize acronyms and they get those wrong, or they assume that you've got to have parentheses or you just go left to right. People are just really forgetting what multiplication is. Multiplication is literally repeated addition. All right? So you have to resolve the multiplication here, before you add 5 plus 3, this 3 times 2 is telling us that this 3 times 2, these numbers are joined together tightly because this is just shorthand for saying 3 plus 3. It's repeated addition. No parentheses are required to give multiplication precedence. All right, so here's your proof. All right, so let's get this down. 3 times 2 is the same as adding 3 two times. 3 times 2 is the same thing as 3 plus 3. So when you see multiplication, you got to remember these numbers are tightly bound. You can't just say, okay, 3 times 2, you're not associated anymore. We're going to do this addition first. No, when you see the multiplication sign, this 3 times 2 has got to be resolved because 3 times 2 is the same thing as 3 plus 3. So if you don't like working with mixed operations, mixing multiplication with addition and subtraction, you can just convert this 3 times 2 to addition, and you're going to get the same answer of 7, which is the only correct answer. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. 11 minus 4 gives you 7. So once again, 7 is the correct answer. All right, now a lot of people get confused about calculators. This is an example of the difference between scientific mode and standard mode on a Windows computer. Depending on what mode you set that calculator for, you're going to get two different answers. The correct answer is 7 because when you put this calculator in scientific mode, it works in what is known as expression mode, meaning that you can type the entire expression and it keeps track of it all the way up to when you hit the equal sign, and you'll get the answer of 7, as you see here. Now we jump over to this calculator. I entered the expression the same way. I entered 5 plus 3 times 2 minus 4, and then hit the equal sign. But look what happened. It did 5 plus 3 and then basically resolved 5 plus 3 and got 8. And then it did 8 times 2 and got 16. And then when I hit the equal sign, it took 16 minus 4 and got 12. And this is not correct. That is because calculators that work in immediate execution mode do not keep track of the proper order of operations. Those kinds of calculators rely on you to know better. So if you were going to enter this in on this particular calculator, you would actually have to manually type 3 times 2 and then get 6, and then you would add 5 and subtract 4, and then you would get 7, which is the correct answer. That is the difference. So what I run into a lot is a lot of people just simply do not understand how calculators work. You need to understand your calculator and how to use it properly. Cheap dollar store calculators do not work in expression mode. It's the difference between immediate execution mode, which is what cheap calculators use, and expression mode, which and if you're using an Android phone or an iPhone and you use the calculator on those do work in expression mode, all right? Those do work, and you will get the correct answer if you type the entire expression and hit equal sign. Not true if you use a cheap dollar store calculator, and also not true if you're using a computer and a Windows computer and you're using standard mode on that calculator. So hopefully that's been helpful. If this has been helpful in any way, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.